So good morning. And I'm glad to see you sort of in person, virtually in person anyway. And I've been looking forward to this because, of course, I've been, ever since the bird head caught my eye, that must have been like a number of years ago. Do you know the one I'm talking about? I have followed your work and tried to look at it whenever I could. So to actually like see you as, not in character, just as yourself, that's fun. That's very fun.
Oh, thank you. And it's nice meeting you as well. I mean, I've been watching your work for some time now, and always found it very inspiring and interesting. And I gotta tell you, my favorite film from you, definitely. I mean, it's, oh my God, Haunted After Fear. It's so intense to look at, but it's just so real and
Oh,
so.
that one. Oh, God, I'm glad. You might be the only person who likes that one. That was so much fun to make. Thank you so much.
I loved it though, and I love the whole the way you approached it. I love the part where everything just goes into this TV, this TV screen, a small TV, I guess, and it's just brilliantly done. And yeah, it was very. When I watched it, I was just like, wow, this is so real, and it's just so which is good.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad to hear that because I had fun, but it was, even I could see that it was kind of out there. So, but we're here to talk about you. And I'm so glad that you're able to do this. I mean, we all wear a million hats, and not everybody has time. Not everybody can fit it in. And we're sort of lucky we live in the same country. This is, except for Matt, this is the first interview that I conducted for PDH that's in the United States. So,
Oh, okay.
So let's see. The first thing that I ever thought about you, and probably a lot of it has to do with that you do acting, performance art, I don't know what you call it. But then I saw the other work you did, and I think you're probably blessed with a lot of energy. Is that true?
I would like to think so. People do say that, you seem to be doing a lot. Honestly, I don't think I am. I think that I just react whenever inspiration hits me. And I think some people do find that to be like a lot, and I actually don't think it is. I just take it as it comes to me. Sometimes there could be a gap of about maybe 6 to 8 months where I'm not doing anything. But maybe I'm still submitting an older film to film festivals, so I'm busy with that. I do, okay, so music is like the thing that I do sort of like on the side, but my focus lately has been more in film. So it seems like I'm just doing a lot, but it's, for me, I don't feel it that way so much. I just feel like I'm just going by the rhythm of what's coming at me and how I react to things. And if it feels worthwhile for me to take on whatever that project is, creative project, whether it's music, whether it's a film, then I'll do it. But I guess from the outside, it might seem like it's a lot, right? Coming at
like a real self-starter. That's the word we use in this country, self-starter.
Right.
So
okay.
Now you have to admit that's true, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I wrote down, you read the interview that I sent you.
Yes.
I had no idea how many different hats you wear: professional filmmaker, experimental filmmaker, musician, singer-songwriter, and music producer.
Right.
So you've talked a little bit already about your work experience. And I think because you wear so many hats, and it just sounds like there's a lot of complexity in what you do, I thought I wanted to know, what's a typical, if there is such thing as a typical week for you, what would your week look like?
Well, I do have a daytime job, a regular daytime job, 9 to 5. So that's usually my mornings and afternoons. Usually, like I don't get home until like 6 o'clock in the afternoon. So basically, at that point, if I'm writing something, I'll write something at that moment. I'll sit down in front of the computer, write treatment a lot of the times for a film, maybe, and ideas, or I'm talking to different actors, just trying to see if I could get something together, trying to plan something out. But that's typically my weekdays. But on the weekends is when I really do take advantage of my time. So the weekends is when I could shoot films. It's when I could go into the studio to record any music projects that I might have in mind. I try to really leave that for the weekends. So my weekends are usually more busy. Usually Sunday evenings, I'm like, I really didn't have any downtime. So now it's back to work again. And like, wow, okay, So I have to juggle the idea of like, I have a daytime job to pay the bills. And then I have my creative outlet which, I have to give a lot of time and energy to as well. So it's like both things. And it could be exhausting sometimes, and sometimes I feel like I need to push away, but I can't push away the creative side of everything, because I feel like without that, I'm not going to be able to keep my sanity, in life. So I have to keep that going. And obviously I can't push away my daytime job because I need that to survive financially. So.
Well, I can tell you that as hard as it seems, when you're able to retire, I can't tell you how funny I find that word. Because I was a paralegal. I mean, I was like way, way, way in foreign territory for like 40, 45 years. And after work, I would try, because I started out as a sculptor.
Okay.
And so if after the years where I was going to class after work, studying anatomy and sculpture classes, I would go home. I would try to put on my overalls as soon as possible, at least have them on. My husband and I are both also writers, and our rule here is if you sit in front of the computer for 2 hours biting your nails with your file open, that's writing. And I think that I'm hearing some of that from you, that for me, it was like, putting on my overalls, that's making sculpture. Even if I don't have the energy or I can't see what to do next, I've got the juices,
Right. Yeah.
around. But see, the thing is, if you aren't in the habit of creating, it's like when you retire, it's like you're starting all over, and there's no reason to do that if you can just get in the habit. And right. It's worth it. Let me tell you, it's worth it, especially just the, it's like you're like boom, 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 boom. And you don't want to wear yourself out, but your body tells you when you're doing that anyway.
Yeah.
And go with it. Try to have a little fun, but go with it.
Yeah. 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 I hear you.
So, let's see. There was something specific. I thought of it this morning. I should have written it down. I'm sorry. Oh, it looks like you're exhibiting a lot right now. And some of that looks like newer work. I mean, some of it, because you're prolific, so you have a lot of stuff to try to keep out there. But how do you navigate that as well? Because exhibiting takes a lot of energy. Even when you're just sending things out, you've got to write a new bio usually for each show, you have to participate in publicity. How do you fit that in?
So in terms of exhibitions, well,
By that
I've done
I mean screenings, not just
film,
installations or gallery
right,
shows or one night events. I
right,
call it all exhibiting because that's really what it is.
right.
Festivals.
So basically, like I guess submitting for screenings for film festivals. That's my focus a lot of the times. Well, the bio is not so difficult only because I already have something set up, and that's just copy and paste, and just send that over
Yeah,
to them. The
yeah.
easiest thing in the world. I'm not someone. I had a friend who wrote about me because I'm just not great to be able to write about myself. You know what I'm saying? So like, I had to just get someone else who's a writer, and then she wrote a pretty decent biography, and that's what I use as the prototype for everything. And I have no pushbacks from any festivals and say, oh no, this is like whatever. So it's been good in that sense.
Mhm.
So my whole thing, what I want is a lot of the times, and this is the promise that I make a lot to the actors, because I know we're all in it together when we do a project. It's a collaborative effort,
Right.
and actors have it hard, especially underground actors, and they have a
I'm so
passion for
glad to
this.
hear you say that because I'd love to ask you about that because I do work for other people as an actor sometimes. So can we talk about that next? So I'm
Yeah,
sorry
sure.
to interrupt.
No, that's okay. No, I mean, and then my whole point is just that they work so hard and they have a lot of passion. They put a lot of themselves into it. They work almost for nothing, in terms of getting paid, but the passion is what speaks for itself. And I feel like my promise to them is like, I will do my very best to put this work out there, expose the work, put you out there, with me. And my big thing with film festivals is my priority when I look at them is, are you going to screen this? Even if it's only 5 people in the audience, I don't care. It's just the process of getting exposure somewhere. I don't care if it's some little theater down the block in Serbia. I don't care, whatever. It's just as long as there's that option for some exposure. Online is fine, I guess, to a degree. It's just that I find, and I know you know this, it's just that I find it hilarious that film festivals would charge $75 for an online event where I'm like, what are you doing with that money? Otherwise, you know what I'm saying? It's like,
And
come on.
$150 for an analysis or for a review.
Yeah, and it's like, so I look into things like that, and I'm very selective in that way. And obviously, if the experience wasn't rewarding, there's a really good chance I won't submit again after that one time. But so far, I gotta say, 90% of the time has been, even if I didn't win or whatever, it doesn't matter. It's been rewarding. Just the idea of being able to expose my work. That's my priority with festivals, is just exposure, because it's hard enough. It's not that I want to be rich and famous, but I just want to develop this work I'm really proud of and just show it to people and maybe have it connect with people who will be interested in it and
Right,
have that
right.
opportunity, and I think that's very important to me. It's important to the actors involved. It's important to the cinematographer. We're all, none of us are established in the industry, so we're all looking for that slight spotlight that can come our way. So that's my thing with festivals. Yeah.
So I've only done a little bit of working with other actors on film. Obviously, I did theater, but that
Right.
is not the same thing. And I was never the director. Nobody would ever let me direct. And I like working for other people. I like being directed. I really I thrived on that, and I felt like it made my work better.
Right.
But I how do you, once you have your cast,
Mm-hmm.
do you work individually with people at first? Do you read all together to start out? How do you navigate that?
So I'll give you a perfect example. The film that I'm working on now, called Vuk, Murder in the Blue World, it's
Good,
technically
Ooh, love that.
so it's technically my first narrative film, a little more straightforward narrative film. It will have some arty elements to it, but It's my first narrative film, and it's the first time that I've worked with more than two actors at least. The hardest part for me was getting everybody on schedule and try to get everybody on the same page. I realized before I was only working with one actor, which was one-on-one. It was a lot easier to handle, but this time it was like, wow, that's a challenge. But like to answer your question directly, yes, I absolutely needed rehearsals with them. So Stefan, who was in the poet seat, is in this film again, and the girl who's playing the girlfriend role in this film, I had them rehearse not once, twice, maybe 4 or 5 times before we shot the film, because it's, you know, it's hard. I had to pay for a location, and when we went to this location, basically I wanted them on point, and it really helped tremendously to not waste time. They knew exactly what they needed to do. It's been rehearsed. The emotions are there. This is a dramatic story, so to speak. So the emotions, they click on, you know, when I switch that switch, they have to be on, and the rehearsals help a lot. So I knew that from the get-go. I said, I know I need rehearsals, and that was important for me. Even just the other actors who are doing walk-ons, basically, they're not really having any lines, just getting them to rehearse what I need from them exactly. There's one guy who's playing the target, and I rehearsed with him just his walk, basically. Stop here, remember, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that. When we went to the park to film his scene, he knew exactly what to do. Everything was quick, easy.
Marks. That's great.
That's it. So yes, rehearsals for me are very important. Never did it too much in the previous films because I was more, they were more experimental films. So I was really reacting instinctively to the setting. And what was important for me before in my experimental films, just making sure I got the right person, the right actor visually. Like Auricular Confession, Esteban, he came from Buenos Aires to do that film here in New York.
Wow.
He's a great model actor. He's not an actor that he delivers lines, but he's a great model actor. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
you look at his photos are amazing. And I said, this is the guy that I need for Auricular Confession. I asked him, you know, he said, yeah, sure, whatever. He came. And everything that you see in that film, yes, I had it in my mind and I knew what I wanted, but how I was going to shoot it, I wasn't going to know until I got to the location with him, you know, and it was more instinctual, you know, and that's how it is with my other films that are experimental like that. I think Vuk was a little bit more like, let's rein it in, you know, and let's make sure I'm in like full control here of what's going on, you know.
That's so cool. Wow. Oh, I wanted to ask you, so you're writing scripts. You're actually writing scripts. I'm curious, how much time do you think you're spending doing that? Because writing is hard to juggle with that, with, you know, physically getting things done.
Yeah, so I've been writing, okay, so I write treatment, which is more accessible for me to do. And then when I did a poetry was the first film that I had to write dialogue for. So I wasn't very confident. And so I got this Italian filmmaker, Emanuele Michetti, and I asked him, can you help me write this dialogue? And it's just one person delivering this dialogue in the poet seat. And I gave him what I wrote, and then he helped me mold it. And it's basically a monologue, a poet seat. It's not really like anything. I don't know if I call that a script. And then Dark Forest, the narrative that you hear the voiceover, I wrote that because I was feeling more confident to be on my own. But that's still more like a dialogue. But when Vuk came along, and the idea of two characters talking to each other and understanding their emotional sensibilities was like, wow, this is really not that easy. So I feel a little weird calling it a script. I guess it is a script, a very short one. I call it more of a treatment because I'm still learning that process. And my hat's off to people who are, you know, who are able to be screenwriters and do it effectively, because it's not easy. It is like writing a novel, so to speak, and there's character development, you have to really imagine the settings, and then you have to put that on paper. It's not easy at all, you know. And I'm a little nervous for book because I'm like, well, I hope it's decent. I don't know. We'll see. so, so yeah.
You just have to dive in the deep end, because until you dive in the deep end, you're really not going to be able to go off from that. And that's what we really have to do, is
Yeah.
take
Yeah.
the risk. So I respect that, and I certainly understand that. I studied playwriting for 10 years,
Yeah.
and I understand the rules, and I'm a good writer, but I honestly think that the legal briefs that I wrote were about 100 times better than any of the plays I wrote. The thing is, though, I had to learn so much about organizing my thoughts writing legal briefs, because that's for somebody else. That's got to communicate to a lot of different people. A judge often, the attorney on the other side, usually the attorney on the other side gives a copy of that to his or her client.
Yeah.
And so you really have to communicate. And I feel like that's how I really learned how to communicate. So when I finally just decided to stop writing dialogue, which I'm not as bad at, I decided just turn on the camera and start talking. And that
Right.
worked, because my actor is just stronger than my writer. That's one of the reasons why I so admire what you're doing, because you're not just doing acting sometimes, but you're also writing and you're directing. And that's just a bigger picture that you have to keep in mind at all times. So, oh, please just keep on, keep on.
Thank you. Thank you.
So the other thing, I forgot about this because I forgot to look at the questions yesterday. There is so much beauty in the details, even just the details, but also the settings of your work. And I pointed out the Dark Forest and Anteater.
The amphitheater, yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right. It took me
I,
a while to
yeah,
figure that out.
I
Um,
stole that from Fassbinder. That was the name
oh,
of his theater group. This is
oh,
German.
oh, well, I
Yeah.
like it. It's just, it took me a while. Now I've already forgotten that I figured it out. What about beauty? Because it's not, it's a, I feel like in your work, it's an element that's just part of what you're doing. Your work doesn't seem to be about beauty itself. And I'm a minimalist, so I like that you do that. But what is beauty? I mean, how do you juggle that? What does that mean to you? Why do you choose those details? I know that's a hard question to answer, and it's hard to put it, to capsulize it. But I've always been struck by that since I started seeing your work.
For me, beauty is an element that I would say two words. That has to be dramatic and dark, right?
Mm.
And I feel that once I see that visually and I'm able to put that onto the screen and I see that, to me, that's beauty, you know? So you're talking about Amphitheater of 10. What's beautiful about that particular film is some of the scenes that are theatrical, if you look at, because it was filmed in a very small theater, dark, but there are elements of drama in there, and that to me speaks volumes of beauty, right? So that's what beauty would be to me. A Dark Forest, it's the beauty behind that film. not so much in the imagery, but so much also in what is being exposed. It's the beauty of the mystery of the forest. You know, it's the mystical side of life. You know, it's the um, it's the mystery of life. You know, yeah, that's the beauty behind that film for me. You know, and when I see that film, and what I interpret as beauty is not so much looking at this girl in a white dress, or not so much that, but it's just what overall um, what the film is giving to you visually overall. You know, you're looking at this film and you see suddenly a specter or something, like it looks like a ghost or something. To me, that's beauty. You know, other times you see the forest, you see it in a certain way, you see the sunset at a certain point, that's beauty. You know, so to me, beauty is just that, the mixture of drama and darkness. You know.
Oh, that's, I'm going to write that down. Um, okay, you've already mentioned a few other filmmakers, but
Yeah.
every artist has a handful of other artists that they look to for inspiration and guidance. Is there a particular artist, filmmaker, or even a movement that inspired you?
Yes. So when I first started making, well, let me just say that just to give you a background. So basically, I started in music when I was in my late 20s or so. Creatively, that was the output that I felt that I thought I could give, and I've been doing music since my late 20s. You know, started with demos, whatever. And then eventually, as time evolved, I guess I did that for 10, 15 years. Suddenly I started doing music videos. And music videos, suddenly I realized, wow, I like creating these visuals. And a lot of people have told me anyways, you know, your music videos are so cinematic, your music is cinematic, you know, you're not really a pop singer, though you do some stuff that's sort of popish, but it's not really pop, you know, and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2017, I started diving into film work, you know, and I did Mother's Milk. That's my first film with my mom. That was the year before she passed away. And I just told her, Mom, I just want to try something. I love your hands, you know. They've aged and they've lived through so much and they're worked, you know
Right,
what I'm saying?
right, yeah.
So I want to film you just going over things that mean the most to you. And I just filmed on a very cheap camera. And what I got from that was, I said, what have I been doing the last 15 years with music that now I'm getting with film? And it spoke to me like in so many ways. I've always loved films, but I always thought it was such a far-fetched idea for me to even do any kind of to become a filmmaker, because I thought it was be overtly expensive to do. And it's just so far-fetched for me. But I didn't realize that there's so much more that you can do that doesn't have to be Hollywood productions. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly, yeah.
And who inspired me when I first started, and I've always loved experimental filmmakers such as Andy Warhol in particular.
Mm-hmm.
There's just something, his aesthetics is just something, it's so stripped down, so simple, but there's something in what he does that is just so special. You know what I'm saying? And I took that as a huge inspiration when I started making films, and that gave me the audacity to go into experimental filmmaking. And that's when I started with Mother's Milk. And I was not afraid to try something abstract, not afraid to do something simple, not afraid to give you something that, you know, when I tell people I make films, people are imagining really straightforward films. And when they look at my films, they're like, what is that? You know,
Yeah,
these are people who have mainstream mentality, you know?
I don't know what that is.
So, but it's fantastic to know that other people, peers before you, who have done great jobs. It proves that what matters is what you are, the core of everything is what you want to deliver, your truth, you know, in filmmaking, whatever that is. So yeah, in the beginning it was people like Andy Warhol. I loved so much Ken Jacobs, Stan Brakhage. I mean, the typicals, you know, but it was an education for me, you know. As I'm evolving now, like I'm telling you, like now I'm doing Vuk, my first narrative film. It's a narrative film with art elements, right? But the people who are inspiring me to take that extra step are people who are like Robert Eggers, um, David Lowery, you know, those types. Because I love their films. The Witch, when I first saw The Witch, I thought it was amazing. And it's proven to me that you can create something that speaks from you, your own voice, but make it cinematic, make it sort of like narrative enough to be out there in the industry. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if he makes a lot of money or whatever, but I know he's out there working with Nicole Kidman and Northman, that sort of thing. But it's been proven to me it is possible to mix the two. And right now, those are the guys that are inspiring me to push forward and try this other element, which is the narrative, you know.
I can't wait to see how
I, yeah.
you progress towards that. No, I'm anti-commercial, and I inherited a personality trait. My sister has it also. It's called chromatophobia. So those are the people that really believe that money is evil and money ruins everything. I mean, that's part of my personality. And I think being in the business world, the way that I was as a paralegal put me off even more. But I want my work to communicate and be viable.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that having, because there's some commercially successful directors that I watch over and over and over again. And I do think that lifts me up a little bit, in spite of the fact that I do not want to be part of that world. And I had a hard enough time fitting in. I mean, I never fit in, but I kept trying.
Right.
But I think there is something to that, to see that sort of off in the distance and stretch yourself further, and really try to get your tech chops down. I think that's a good thing. I do. That you can't just stay in your corner doing the same thing the same way over and over and over again. So my prejudice does not extend, my anti-commercial prejudice does not extend to trying to make the work better.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, and I've thought about that, because you know I had seen a lot of your work anyway over a number of years, but then trying to get ready for this interview, I saw that you seem to go from one genre to another, and I admire that deftness. I really do.
Thank you.
Yeah,
that happens to me a lot in music. That was one of my biggest problems when I was making music. People were like, you're doing so many different genres. I mean, I'm like, well, it's a mixtape syndrome, I like to call it. I do what inspires me. I listen to all different types of music, so it's like, you know, that's gonna affect what I do creatively as well. So I guess maybe that's why I didn't get the traction that I'm getting so far with film. Maybe it's because it's confusing to people. But I do what I feel inspired to do. That's as simple as that. I mean, why should you deny yourself when something's speaking to you and say, "Oh no, because I'm not allowed to"?
You're able to do it. You have the energy and the enthusiasm and the positivity. Yeah.
And inspiration, yeah. And I know, yeah. I mean, it's. I think you go with the flow. If it's a question of me doing the same thing, the same style over and over, then that's what it is, and that's what inspires me. That's what I'll do. And then you'll still get, you know, criticism from people and say, well, you keep doing the same thing over and over. Can you do something else? I'm like, well, this is what inspires me. You know, that's.
You feel like you do the same thing over and over again? I certainly do not see that. I see something new that you've done, and I'm surprised, like, oh my God, where did this come from? How can his mind be so broad? Do you really feel like you're doing the same thing over and over again?
I think at a certain point, like since I was working, I was working with one actor, and there's always a guy. People were like, "Is this like your trilogy of the one-man show?" Like I was doing it, for example, I Dream In, which was with Stu Lee, A Ritual Confession with Esteban, and then I did a poetry with Stefan. So it's like after I think what they're referring to maybe is just my approach of how I'm doing these films, but I'm just like, well, that's how I feel inspired to do. I mean, whenever I'll get an ensemble cast of different people, then I'll let you know. Now it happened with Vuk, sort of. It was an interesting experience. It didn't traumatize me that I'll never want to do it again, but it was definitely a little challenging to get different personalities, deal with different people all at once. One of the biggest thing was like when I'm shooting a scene and I have 2-3 different actors on set and they're all different, they're all coming at me at once. It's a little overwhelming. It's like, all right, one at a time, you it's like, yeah. But it was so far it's been a great experience, and I'm hoping that the film will come out good, and we'll see.
Yeah, I'm sure it will.
Thank you.
So they will cut us off pretty soon.
Okay.
But let's see, we've talked about practically. Oh, do you have anything that you specifically wanted to talk about? Like any like burning personal issues as an artist that you've been thinking about, or questions, or like a project that might be like starting to grow in the back of your mind. That's where mine grow. That's what it feels like. Or like some, new ideas or anything.
Well, maybe like what my current film, Hal, is about, basically, was a weird film because it was just a film that, okay, so it was a reaction to being an artist, an underground artist, and having to hold a daytime job. And like I explained early in the interview, how much of that takes up of your time, and then you have to make time for your creativity. So Hal was just a reaction to something that I went through my previous department that I worked for last year in December. And after years and years of, being a great employee for the department, scoring high scores in my evaluations, and, everybody loves me, I guess, or whatever. Being a good worker, I guess. And suddenly I ran into a situation where I said, I just need this extra little amount of money to fix a personal situation. I think I'm entitled to ask or whatever. And when I did ask, everything just changed, and I felt so offended by that I was just like, well, what is the point of me being here, giving you my best, when, all you really could have said was no, but not giving me this weird reaction. It was just so bad that like my manager eventually, like at a point when she was talking to us as a group, she would give me her back. It was that weird and petty. And needless to say, I quit and I went to a different department.
Good for you.
Yeah. And so how came out of that? It was a reaction to say, you work so hard, you're barely making it by, and what is the point of this whole thing? So I guess what I'm trying to say is like, sometimes the topic of money, finance for struggling artists, I could only imagine how hard it must be for those who don't have a daytime job, who solely depend on their income from their art, period. Mm-hmm. And the age that we live in too, because we're in the digital age where a lot of the public really do want or expect things for free. And there's no respect towards the artists in terms of, they don't understand that $9.99 that you bought their film online is the world to them. and those $9.99 is not really going to them in their pocket. They still have to give a percentage to the platform that their film is on or whatever.
Right.
So there's all these things, and I just feel like there has to be a way for artists to be respected more in that way. You know what I'm saying? Money-wise, you know, and have, you know, these festivals are fine and exhibitions are fine, but I mean, I'm sure you would understand that sometimes it's more of an expense
Yeah.
than an income, you know, and it's hard, you know, and you're doing that for exposure, but you know, I don't know, I don't make a lot of money per year. Now, sometimes I do sit back and wonder, how come I'm not even able to make that amount of money, which is not a lot, you know, through my art. And you wonder about that sometimes.
Yeah.
Like I said, what keeps me going is just the fact that I have a passion for what I do, and I'm inspired, genuinely inspired to do what I want to do. Otherwise, there will be no sense in doing this.
Exactly. Exactly. And if you're true to your path,
Yeah.
you will probably continue to be able to make art the way that you want. I think it's very important that we have to remind ourselves that we're our own boss. Nobody, even when we're collaborating, it's not like at work where somebody's telling us what to do, or even trying to tell us how to be.
Right.
And I think that if you stay true to yourself in your art, in your work, in the way you relate to yourself as an artist, that it's probably going to keep the rest of your life straight. That's the way it's been for me. I mean, I'm 71, and I feel like the sacrifices and choices that I made in order to continue to do art, they've served me well. I'm a lot happier person because I was true to myself as an artist. I think that's the thing to keep in mind. I really do.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I have to cut this up. I've so enjoyed talking to you.
Same here, Sylvia. Thank you.
Really refreshing. And I think you're going to do great things more. I mean, you already are. And I look forward to seeing more.
Oh, thank you, Sylvia. It's been a pleasure meeting you finally.
Yeah.
The other day I went to the festival, and I was like, is Sylvia going to be there? You know, I thought you lived in New York.
No.
I was under the impression you lived in New York for some reason.
I lived in New York for 5 years, so I probably have some New Yorkisms.
Okay.
I got the culture.
Right.
Anyway, so I hope to talk to you again at some point.
Yeah, sure. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Sylvia.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.